I was a proud, arrogant young guy that had done it before, so I was ready to go. And I was rowing out of that eddy, and I was realizing I'm not moving. I am floating downstream, and I am not where I need to be. Hi, I'm Paul. One of my first memories of youth dynamics is when I came to visit my sisters who were summer staffing. We were going down the Idaho River, and we were prepping for the first day on the river, and we were running up and down and getting the stuff in the boats, and I smacked my face on the gate of the truck and split my head open right there. And we were sort of at the spot where oh no, do we go to the ER to get stitched up and drive back, or do I not go on the trip? And then ultimately we decided, you know what, my dad, he made a good first aid kit and he has some sutures in there, so we'll suture up my face. So so we went over and threw the stick in my mouth and got ready to suture it and realized there were no sutures. So plan B had to come in. And we pulled out the fishing line and the needle, and my dad sewed it together while my sister had me in the headlock. And it was painful, but it was sort of fun, and it was a fun way to be oh, look at my scar and the sutures and all that as a kid. And it was a great trip. Enjoyed that. That was the first memory of youth dynamics, and it has been a good story ever since to share with others. But then becoming a summer staffer, back a couple of years later, at the end of the summer, we were going down the Salmon River, and I was put on an old catamaran. So it has these two big white tubes that leaked like crazy. This ship was sinking 24/7. You had to be pumping each time the water came and ripples came towards us. And I had the two kids on the whole trip that no one wanted, because they were crazy and annoying, and they were stuck with me. Which I was like, okay, fine, I'll have a good time. But it was also man, I'm stuck by myself. I don't get to enjoy the rest of the group. But those two kids loved hugging onto the front of those tubes and yelling and screaming and having a good time, and it was a good time. But as we came along, we got to Snowhole, which is one of the bigger rapids on that section of river. And we were scouting it okay, cool, I've done this before, it'll be easy. I was a proud, arrogant young guy that had done it before, so I was ready to go. And I was rowing out of that eddy, and I was realizing I'm not moving. I am floating downstream, and I am not where I need to be. So I started rowing harder, and it wasn't doing anything. And eventually, there's a rock in the middle of the river that's just barely under the water, and we hit it, and we sort of flop underneath it, and we float down. We're fine, and those two kids think that we're having the best time ever, and that's crazy, and I'm sitting there so humiliated, because I'm this is a rapid that I've done before, and I did it a lot cleaner last time. So I felt a little bit of shame on that, because I thought, I'm a better guy than this. Why did I fail in such a way? And then, just the next day, we're floating along. I have my good buddy Adam in the boat with me, and we're rowing along. Paul Spence, who was in charge of the trip, was up on the side of the hill trying to decide where we were going to camp. He was the first boat. We were the second boat coming down, still in that leaking cat that was dragging in the water and hard to row. And Paul Spence was sort of pointing here and there and sort of thinking, and when we were halfway past the spot where we needed to get out of the current, he started saying, get over there, we're camping here, and we're so we start rowing as hard as we can, reefing on those oars, breaking both of our backs, and as we're doing it, Paul Spence is screaming at us how could you miss it, why aren't you moving? And we're we're trying. Those oars are bending, and we scrape the bottom rock of the eddy and barely make it in. And later on, Paul Spence is it's a good thing you made it, because if you didn't, we'd be rowing for multiple hours in the dark. And we're well, you should have told us before we were halfway down. But as I think of those stories and the things that gave us areas for growth and just those experiences that we carry with us, I think of how pride often comes before the fall, and how God calls us to care for those that are rejected by those around us. I think of Romans 12, 16, where it says, live in harmony with one another. Do not be prideful, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. And I think of so often in life, we go along and say, I know how to do this. I'm going to do such a great job. And look at me go. I'm puffing on my ego. And then the second we get into the situation, even if we've done it right 50 times before, I find that oftentimes, at least I tend to fail. And I go, wow, that was humiliating. And then I think of how prideful I was before. They go, maybe I should be a little bit more humble and willing to care for those around me and allow others to enjoy the fruits. So yeah, I'm Paul, and those are just a couple stories from my time here at YD.
Thanks for joining us for Streamside Stories. Click the link to subscribe and join us for more stories and virtual adventures. This isn't the only way we want to adventure together, though. We also want to invite you to come join us for an adventure and create some stories of your own. To do so, head to www.yd.org to connect with us and our bases to start your journey today. Thanks.